Good evening and welcome. It is a true honor to have you all here tonight to celebrate our milestone anniversary and our years of impact. On June 1st, 1920, the California Soldiers Widows Home Association was formally incorporated. At the time, women's economic opportunities were minimal, and the community of Sawtelle, California, now known as West LA, set out to ensure that widows of the fallen would not die in poverty. One of the original founders, Noah V. McDowell, he was a Civil War veteran, and he did something remarkable during that time. He insisted that the home not only serve the widows of veterans, but also war nurses who serve their country, making us the first organization in the country to serve women veterans. This simple yet powerful inclusion of war nurses planted the seed for what would become the organization you are all familiar with today. At a time when women's military contributions were largely ignored, McDowell acknowledged what we have always known. Women have always served, and their service and contributions deserve to be known. Nearly 2 years later, on President Lincoln's birthday, February 12, 1922, a crowd of over 2,000 people gathered. They witnessed the laying of a cornerstone for that home. Flags waved, community members stood shoulder to shoulder, and veterans looked on as history was made. The Soldiers' Home Governor, O.K. Marshall, speaking to those in attendance, said, "It has taken the world 6,000 years to begin to recognize the tremendous part women have played in war, and to compensate her for her losses." That community would go on to fundraise and build 8 cottages, in which widows and women veterans spanning decades would find honor, financial security, and a sense of community. At every turn of conflict, women continued to volunteer to serve our country, often returning to civilian life with little recognition and many without access to the benefits they earned. As women's roles in society continue to evolve, we too evolved. We expanded our programs under the name Military Women in Need, providing hundreds more with housing and financial assistance. In 2016, I had the honor of leading our next chapter, and we set forth with a rebrand, a new name, a new logo, but with the same tenacity and spirit of our founders. While the support for widows at the time was plenty, we strengthened our focus on the women veteran community. We served our last widow in 2024. We took to heart McDowell's colleague, Sarah Moore, her insistence. If I understand the spirit of this movement, it is for the entire United States and not confined to this locality. We want a large organization, she said. Today, Foundation for Women Warriors continues on that work first envisioned in 1920. Our programs enhance the overall and economic well-being of women veterans. Our professional development and resource and referral programs are accessible nationwide, last year serving over 41 states. Our financial assistance programs have formally expanded beyond California to the state of Virginia. To date, we've served over 8,000 women veterans and children through our transition and emergency assistance programs. We've also provided congressional testimony, not once but twice, that led to the passing of the Deborah Sampson Act and additional funding for homeless veterans with children. We've supported major advocacy efforts to honor the service of women veterans who went years without recognition. Most notably, the 6888, the Hello Girls, and we even spearheaded the first California license plate to honor women veterans. Our San Diego VA medical facility is named after one of our own, an effort our team took on. It bears the name of Captain Jennifer Moreno, a San Diego native, a first-generation American, and an Army nurse killed in Afghanistan. A wing in that VA facility is also named after the late Kathleen Bruyere. She was one of 8 women who sued the Department of Defense to ensure that women could serve on ships. Tonight, you'll hear directly from veterans who walk through our programs, and you'll learn how not charity, but investment help them thrive after service. In closing, we gather not just to reflect on 105 years of service, but to recommit to the future. 105 years ago, it was a Civil War veteran who imagined a home that honored not just sacrifice, but service. Tonight, we honor that vision and all those who carried it forward. I want to thank our veterans, first and foremost, for entrusting in us the ability to serve you. Our supporters and every member of this community and mission-driven community, thank you for believing in what's possible when we center those too often left in the margins. Here's to the next 105 years, rooted in legacy, fueled by progress, and led by warriors. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to introduce to you our moderator for our fireside chat. Mercedes Elias is a seasoned business leader, veteran advocate, and recently served as the CEO of a service-disabled veteran broker-dealer on Wall Street. Mercedes began her career in the United States Marine Corps as a commissioned officer. She serves as our board director, and she also serves as the chair of the New York City Mayor's Veterans Commission. Mercedes holds a bachelor's degree in psychology from St. Mary's University, an MBA with a concentration in finance from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. Please join me on the stage, Mercedes. We are especially honored to recognize a woman who's made it her mission to ensure that one of the most important chapters of really American history, we can say women's military history, but I would say of American history, is not forgotten. Our Distinguished Leadership Award tonight goes to Colonel Edna Cummings, U.S. Army retired, whose tireless efforts led to the Congressional Gold Medal being awarded to the 6th Central Postal Battalion. Because of her, their courage, discipline, and sacrifice are no longer an unwritten chapter in American history. Instead, they are etched permanently into the American story. Edna, please rise for an applause and accept your award. I'll come on this side again.
Thank you all for joining us this evening, and it gives me great honor to speak today to Colonel Edna Cummings. Edna, you spent years championing the legacy of the 6th Central Postal Directory Battalion. What first compelled you to take on this mission, and why has it remained so personal to you all these years?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, and the award, totally unexpected, and I do appreciate your support. So your question, what compelled me to take this mission? I didn't consider it a mission when I started. It started out in 2018 when I volunteered to raise funds for a monument at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, in Buffalo Soldier Park. But that monument grew larger because part of the fundraising was storytelling. And that storytelling had a goal of donations. So we told a great story to the extent where the U.S. ambassador to the United Kingdom saw one of my posts on social media, I just started, and invited our documentary team to the UK to celebrate the 75th anniversary. So the overarching issue is storytelling, and storytelling with a purpose. And then my mom had a friend who served with the 6th, and my mom is 93, And when, at the time, she was late 80s, but when your mother tells you to do something, you do it. And because one of the members of our church was in 6888, and we didn't know anything about her service until I started researching. And then lastly, it became personal. The commander's name was Edna. Her name was Charity Edna Adams, and I read about a Black colonel who opened her mouth sometimes and she wished she wouldn't have. So it became really personal. She survived it, and I did too. And then lastly, I share this now because I write about it in my book. I was in the Women's Army Corps for a while. And the Women's Army Corps wasn't disbanded until 1978 when I graduated from college. I actually served in Women's Army Corps for a few months before it was deactivated or disbanded.
I mean, that's incredible. And as we know, the story of the 6888 went untold for years. What were some of the biggest challenges that you had when you were working on getting that story and bringing it to the public and making sure that they knew about it?
Well, the biggest challenge was twofold. The first challenge was public education, because first of all, no one had heard of the 6888. Few people knew that Black women even served during World War II. So just putting that story in context, that there were Black women who served in World War II overseas, more than 6,000 served. So the 6888 was only a fraction, about 13% of the Black women on active duty during that time. So I think those were the biggest challenges, is the public education. And then secondly, when we started advocating for the Congressional Gold Medal, I had to explain to people what the Congressional Gold Medal was. Because most people heard of the Medal of Honor, and people still call it the Congressional Medal of Honor, and it's not. It's a civilian award. And then bringing Congress together, and that's a story we don't have time to talk about. But it worked. It's a unifying message.
You know, you're talking about getting Congress on board. What were you surprised about when it came to working with both sides, you know, Republicans and Democrats, and the support that they had for this initiative?
Well, the biggest surprise, I think, was the lack of resistance. Because we really, in our team, grassroots efforts, we did not have a formal organization. You know, I'm not a lobbyist, I'm an advocate, but I did get help from some lobbyists. The unifying theme and the messaging, we focus on the performance. And sometimes just from an email, when I address the 5 W's, you know, good Army training, I think the Marines may do that as well. But the 5 W's, who, what, why, the impact, who, what, why, where, what did the 6888 do that made them above and beyond other military units? They solved the military's male and morale crisis. So any of our veterans who've been deployed, when you go overseas, the Army takes care of your mail. So it was an Army mission, the Army's executive agent. So just sharing that story, and sometimes just on an email alone, I got a yes from members who I didn't expect to receive a yes from.
I mean, that's great. And talking about your new book, it builds upon that legacy of the 6888. So how do you think that kind of conveys to service members today, women in both, you know, service or military leadership? How do you think, you know, what they stood for and everything that they went through applies to service members today?
Well, first of all, the 6888, if you don't know the story, 855 Black women from the Women's Army Corps were sent overseas on an unknown mission. They had no formal training in postal operations, and there was 2 to 3 years of backlog mail, millions and millions, upwards of over 20 million pieces of mail and packages that had just been stopped because of D-Day preparations, the aftermath of D-Day, and just logistical efforts, you know, during wartime. And other units had tried and failed to solve the military's mail backlog, and this backlog was causing a morale problem. So just think for a moment how many times we touch our phones to maintain contact, and how many cards and letters that you may have from family members who are no longer with us, or someone you care about, you still have those. So imagine being on the front lines and not hearing from your loved ones for a couple of years. So mail I looked at it as restoring vital communications was a force multiplier. So the Army and the military had a male morale problem. And so the 688 solved this problem. We cleared the backlog, and I will not go into a lot of detail, but civilians, male units, white wax, other units had tried and failed over 2 years to resolve the male issue, could not get it done until the 688 arrived. Unknown mission. They were not male clerks, so that makes the story even more compelling.
Well, just talking about that, they were under intense scrutiny
Yes.
because they were the only all Black women battalion. What stories of their perseverance and professionalism do you think kind of resonated with you the most?
Well, the ones that resonated with me were the stories that I actually heard from the women themselves. Our team produced a documentary. It's on Tubi and Amazon Prime in 2019, also called The 688. And every one of these women said, we just did our jobs. We got our heads down. We had a mission to do. We were there to take care of the troops. And I don't know if you've seen the movie makes it very clear that the 688 handled millions of pieces of mail from troops of all races. So mail did not have a color, and they didn't care, and nobody cared. They cared about taking care of the troops. They cared about getting the job done. So I think that's the overarching mission and message as well. Focus on the mission, stay on your message, and do the best job that you can. So
I mean, that's incredible. And for a long time, you've served as a mentor and a role model. So considering all of that, how do you define success? And, what is your advice to others as they kind of gauge success for themselves?
Well, there's no such thing as perfect. Perfect is not static. What is perfect today is not perfect the next day. And one thing I remember from my time in the Army, we don't make mistakes. We have learning experiences. A gross miscalculation at the time, but yeah, I make light of that, but a lot of it's just lightening up on yourself. And at the end of the day, if you can look yourself in the mirror and that image that faces back says, you know what, you did the best that you could. Now, I say that, and there are times, yes, I still ruminate over something that I would have, should have. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. You solve today's problems for today. Now, we'll make a list for tomorrow's problems, but just show yourself some grace and a little mercy and just be the best version of yourself, so that reflection that reflects back will give you a thumbs up. And give yourself a thumbs up like, you know what? I did a good job for today. Maybe tomorrow I'll do better.
I think as women veterans, it's a little bit easier for us to get really down on the things that don't work, on the times that we weren't successful. Do you have any daily habits or principles that you kind of incorporate into your life to get to the point where you can say, all right, let's do better tomorrow? Because sometimes I think we just get so stuck in the mundane, it's hard to see outside of that.
Now, you realize that question was not on this list, right?
Worded differently.
No, but seriously, and I get asked that question a lot, and it depends on the day. It really does. But one thing that I do, I open the window, because I truly believe the hardest thing that any of us do every day, first of all, we wake up. And then the next thing, we sit up. And then if we can put our feet on the ground and take that first step, and then just continue to take that step. That's the hardest thing that any of us will do every day. And then I open the window, regardless of what's going on. I do like to open my windows every day. And I think it's because I worked at op centers for so long, where there were no windows. I just value seeing, regardless of rain, it doesn't matter. I don't care. I love opening windows. So in terms of a personal ritual, seriously, I wake up and I'm like, okay, I'm here. And so that's a personal, just giving, thanks and gratitude for being able to stand up. Because some, especially with our veterans, and after we've been pounded for such a long time, it's hard. It really is. And I also tell people who are going through a tough time, and I go back to just pressing pause, I try not to do anything that requires a lot of energy before 10 o'clock. I mean, meetings, if that's my time, whether I read, I walk, or whatever. I just try to set aside that time in the mornings. Now, of course, there are exceptions. And again, it does vary. But again, the most important thing that we can do every day is just wake up.
I mean, that's true. It's the best way to start the day. It's just
That's right.
keep pushing. What can we do as a foundation to help women continue to move forward? You know, like you think about the 688 and they moved mountains for women that came after them. And you did such an incredible job with getting their story to the forefront of everybody. And we want to continue to push women to be greater, to do more. What do you think that we can do collectively to help the next generation of women that's going to come after us?
I think collectively we can continue the storytelling and learn your history because your ancestors and those who've gone before you had it a lot worse. We have tools and resources now that we did not have available then. I mean, women did not have credit cards until 1974. I was a freshman in college, and we lose sight of a lot of, I guess, accomplishments we've had that we just take for granted now. So we're not that far removed from a time where a lot of people in this room did not have the opportunity. So learning from the past, using that to strengthen the present and continue the storytelling. Because every family has a legacy, and I'm sure your parents or someone in your family has told you those harsh stories and reminding you of where you've come from, your history. Build on that and use it to strengthen you. And when I was advocating for the 6888, yes, sometimes it was challenging. And I cannot do this. I met May Cryer from Rosie the Riveters. She said it took her 40 years for someone to pay attention and introduce legislation for the Rosie the Riveter Congressional Gold Medal. And she was 96. And that terrified me. I'm like, May, I don't have 40 years left. I'm not doing this. And so I'm just grateful that it only took us 2 sessions of Congress to get the legislation through, bipartisan, unanimous consent. And that was amazing. Many members of Congress would not respond until I became persistent. And finally, a staffer would say, hey, look, we're not going to co-sponsor because I had to get 2/3 of the House and Senate to agree early on and sign on to the legislation formally before it would go to vote. And so a couple of staffers say, hey, Cummings, look, Congressman, whoever is not going to co-sponsor, in other words, stop calling us, but we will vote yes. So I got a commitment. And so it's all about political capital and things I didn't understand. But regardless, I got the 2/3 Senate and House majority and got Congress to agree that the 6888 deserved to be recognized with the Congressional Gold Medal.
I think storytelling is an art form, and it's always about what part of the story stays with you and resonates with the audience. What was the story that really kind of just hooked you with the battalion and said, this is going to be my purpose and my passion, and I want to make sure that everybody knows about this?
I think the part that really resonated with me was larger than the 6888. And I talked about the 6,000 women who were on active duty, Black women on active duty, not including the nurses. It's about 500 during World War II. 6888 goes overseas. They were welcomed by the locals, invited to tea with the British. They shopped and just had freedoms in Europe that they didn't have in the US. So that was one aspect. But in the United States, my mom's friend I told you about, she was put in confinement. She was confined for a few days because she refused to flip bed springs. And there are stories upon stories about Black women being beaten, spat on, imprisoned, that no one ever talked about. We talked about the blinding of Isaac Woodard that was a catalyst for President Truman to issue the executive order to desegregate the armed forces. He was a veteran, World War II. He was blinded because he was beaten. Black women were beaten and for violating Jim Crow laws. There's a book, Glory in Their Spirit, about 4 women who were medical technicians. They were court-martialed because they were trained as medical technicians, and the hospital commander wanted them to serve as orderlies, changing bedpans, menial tasks. And that was a challenge for the 6AAA to perform a meaningful task instead of being relegated to menial tasks. And so these women organized and court-martialed. They were court-martialed. And one of the women, tried to commit suicide. So none of these stories are ever told. So the non-6AAA stories, I think, gave me the strength. Sometimes I did need it to continue this journey to advocate, because the 6AAA story is larger than the 6AAA. It's about the platform and the journey to get to the point where they were recognized. And when they returned home from war, a lot of the women did not receive their medals. They refused to go to the VA for help. And even some of the veterans, there's only one left now, but I've talked to some of those women and they refused to go to the VA because they were treated so poorly when they returned from the war. But many of them did use the GI Bill to continue their education. One woman actually bought a home when her father co-signed, and just made such an impact in their local communities. And so just the impact of storytelling and listening and understanding how we got to this point to even have conversations about women veterans was so, I think, insightful, because women, forget 6AAA, Black women, just women, period, were never portrayed in World War II movies or documentaries. They were either maybe a nurse, but this nurse was always waiting for a man, hoping she'd get a man, or, this just, hanging out, nothing of any significance. And I thought about that. And before I made these types of statements, I said, I've never seen a woman portrayed in a serious role other than in Captain America, but that's not this fiction. But World War II, I mean, they were never portrayed in any documentary, and even recent documentaries. You don't really hear women. And I still was frustrated then, frustrated now. So that was part of the reason that I became so passionate. It was several of us, grassroots effort to bring this story to the forefront. And now it's international. We have 6AAA days. There are plaques overseas in the United Kingdom where the 6AAA serve. In Rouen, France, there are there's a street renamed after Charity Adams. And if you don't know, there are over 9,000 graves at Normandy, 4 women, 3 are from the 6AAA. So we brought all these type stories to the forefront.
Talking about storytelling, and you think about what veterans are experiencing today with the threat of so many of our histories being erased, and it goes across, different races and genders. We talked, though, about the veteran experience being unifying in itself.
Yes.
And although there is some despair that's happening with everything politically, how do you think that veterans within the space can kind of unite around that identity as a veteran outside of anything that's going on?
Well, veterans, step back when I started working on the 6AAA recognitions, says 6AAA never talked about their story. Veterans don't talk about their story because they're seldom a safe space, because unless you're around other veterans, it's hard to talk about when you're on the DMZ, like I stationed in Korea. I was on the DMZ and I did A, B, C, and D, or when I was wherever and I did the things I did. People don't believe you, think you're exaggerating, and they don't understand what you're talking about most of the time. And so it's hard for veterans to find that space, number one. And then number two, there's such a stigma now. A lot of veterans don't even tell people they're veterans. because of I call it the broken veteran syndrome. I mean, I've been out walking within the past months and I'll have on something with Army and people like, oh my God, are you okay? I mean, that's just the first question, just that reaction. So the sense of community is so important to share those stories, to find that safe space, and just to empower each other that there are segments of the story that we can tell the story, but as make sure you understand your audience and make sure of your message while you're telling that story. So it's it is challenging, and I think it's even getting more challenging as people understand the scope of veteran service and things that we have to do every day, especially if you stay in longer than 2 or 3 years, the responsibility increases. So, but embracing that story, telling that story, and finding a community that's supportive of your efforts and your service, and they really mean it and not just empty platitudes.
What's one piece of advice you have for those in attendance today? And what do you hope that they go with?
I go back to just learn your history. Every family has a legacy. So if you have elders in your family, just take the time to talk to them. My father turns 98 this year, and as he got older, he started telling me more about his military service, and it was just interesting. I was in some course, I cannot remember, and I was reading about his unit. I'm like, is this the unit you were in? He says, oh, yeah. I said, did you all really do whatever? I think it was a unit in Korea. He said, yeah, we did that because, and then it made sense to me. So especially for anyone who's serving, history, military history used to be so boring because I couldn't relate to it. I could not relate. There's nothing that made sense to me. I mean, on weekends, war college, I was plotting to invade North Africa or something. That it was boring. But now there's context to it. So I think that's important when you share your story, especially to someone who's still serving. It helps them put the nature of their service in context. And it's not just showing up and do whatever you're told. There's a reason and a method behind, I don't want to say madness, there's a method behind your actions. So I just think the storytelling becomes even more important and crucial, especially to those who are still serving. Understand the scope of your service. It's just not here and now. There's a reason. And those who came before you made it possible for you to serve. And that's for anyone who is serving or who has served. And even if you're not a veteran, just within your families, learn your family history, learn your family legacy other than the genealogy. There's some really good stories if you talk to your family members.
I found that one of the toughest things for veterans is to talk about their success and their achievements and to acknowledge what it is they've accomplished and everything they've been through. What is one of your proudest accomplishments?
As a veteran?
Like woman, veteran, anything.
I really think writing the book, because it started out in 2015, 16 as a fictionalized version of my life. And I set it aside. And then when I started the 6888 advocacy, I have a friend who's written several books, General Mary Kay Eater, The Girls Who Stepped Out of Line. She said, what's your story? Like, my story is boring because of exactly what you said. Like, yeah, I don't have anything to talk about. She said, yeah, you do. You're more comfortable in telling everyone else's story. I mean, you're doing some things that people don't quite understand or comprehend or they can relate to. How did you get to the point to advocate for the 6888? And so I had to step back, and she was right. I didn't want to talk about the accomplishments. And that goes back, I mean, just people, a lot of people are just humble. And you think what you're doing is not important. But one thing she said, and others have said, don't rely on other people to tell your story. It's kind of like when you are interviewing for a job. If you cannot tell your story and the things that you've accomplished, you are not setting yourself apart from any other applicant. So, with the case of veterans and stories, it's not about setting yourself apart. It's about establishing a legacy, not necessarily for yourself, but for future generations. And it kind of hit me. My son read my book. He says, Mom, he was crazy. You never told me this stuff. And he's 40. I'm like, he says, why didn't you ever talk to me? I said, you never asked. And it was like I owed him something, like he'd been cheated for nothing. And I'm not even sure what he was talking about. But it just reminded me that the book wasn't for me. It was for my children. And your story is not really about you. It's about your legacy. It's about establishing the foundation for future generations in your family or in your community. Because believe it or not, everyone in here has something that someone can connect to, that someone really respects, and you have no idea of the impact you can make on someone's life if you just take the time to share your story.
When you speak, you just draw people. You have this energy. I've personally taken 2 storytelling classes.
Mhm.
For those that may not be as comfortable telling their story or helping to tell the story of others, what advice would you give to them to be able to kind of continue this legacy and do everything that you're talking about as it comes to telling their own story and the stories of others?
Well, I actually took classes.
Oh, you do too? Okay.
I mean, really, because when I started writing, and it reminded me of being in elementary school, start out with an outline. And even if you just write your story, put it in a binder someplace, print it out, don't save it on your device, print it out, just put it someplace. And just think about those pivotal moments in your life and section your life off, childhood, whatever. Or just think about those pivotal moments in your life, those things that made you laugh, those things that made you cry, and just write those down for starters. And I think that's a good start point, as an outline. And then fill in the blanks, and then think about the impact. And then secondly, and this sounds kind of morbid, write your obituary. I know. Seriously, write your obituary. Because one thing, I forgot who, this is not an original thought, so I cannot think of who said it, but we're all just dashes right now. The dash. You're born, you die, and when you write your obituary, there's a dash. So it's kind of like this big math problem. What is in your dash? Solve for X. What is your dash? Let's think about that. When you are, because right now, most of us, we have a bio. And Jody read my bio, and I actually have a folder in my at home in case I die, and I put that in there for now. And it may change, hopefully, and have another 20 years. But just take time to do that. But how do you want to be remembered? Because most of us will have someone, and I don't want to end on this heavy note, most of us will have someone who will claim our remains. So when that person claims your remains and they work on your obituary, how do you want to be remembered? And maybe it was a smile, maybe it was something you did in the community, but how do you want to be remembered? And what is your legacy? And so you may not have an answer. I don't have an answer about my legacy. I don't know what it is, because sometimes what you think of yourself and what people think of you, the two are totally different. I never considered myself a historian. I've never considered myself as an advocate. And all of these titles that I have, I'm like, okay, I am a parent, I'm a veteran. That's pretty much it. I'm a daughter. And some of the classes and exercises were dig deeper. And most of us are pretty modest. And so when you have to really dig deep, and I call it bring it out, kind of like in business, what's your discriminator? What's your special sauce? If you're in business, why do people open your door to come in or click on your website? So what is your special sauce? We're all unique individuals. So it's time, if you choose to do so, to think about that because that is part of your legacy. But do it now and don't allow others to tell your history. Because if you don't share your story, they'll rely on others to share your story because it may not be the one that you want told.
Well, and I thank you for telling us your story, for telling us the legacy of the 688 Battalion, and for just helping everybody in the audience today think about what their story is going to be going forward.
Right, and before we close, where's Jody? Can you please join me on the stage?
This wasn't in the script.
So I met Jody online. What, in maybe 2019, when I was tweeting, and I think she posted something about the 6888. I'm like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Would you please write a letter of support to members of Congress, to sponsors? And a lot of people said no. A lot of organizations would not write a letter of support to Congress, to the Senate and House, supporting the bill. They would not. But Jody did. She said yes, and our relationship grew. And so Jody really became a powerhouse in the 6888's legacy with the letters of support. When I set up a campaign plan, and Jody had California. So when there were legislators who were slow to respond, I said, Jody, who do you know in Congressman's or Senator X office? And Jody, I'm on it. So relentless. So Jody, what I have for you, the Congressional Gold Medal passed in 2022 by unanimous consent, 422-0. And we just, on the 29th, we had the medal presented. About 700 people showed up and 300 families. So Jody, what I have is a replica of the Congressional Gold Medal. So it's not the 3-inch one, but it's the 1.5-inch. But I just, wanted to, instead of a coin, I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're part of the legacy.
And as you already
Thank you.
I just couldn't believe that so many of these powerful women saw things in me that I questioned in myself, and they just met me.
So I was really interested in learning the other women's stories and kind of learning from their strength. And that's why I thought this was a really good program, because we were brought together as a group and we learned from each other and also receive a lot of professional education that kind of went beyond anything I had received before.
We have all the same struggles and all the same aspirations, I would say, just in different walks of life. And I applied to the Women Veterans League cohort because I was looking for community, and I found it.
Because it wasn't just me being celebrated, it was us being celebrated for what we've done. And we're, here to learn more about ourselves and everybody else, but we're also here to represent a population that hasn't gotten the chance to be represented equally, fairly. And I think that we can all agree that that's something that we want to help contribute to. How can we help the next generation be recognized for the work that they've done?
If I can tell any female veteran, anything about this program that's different from any other program is that they actually do care. They want the best for us as female veterans. They see us when we don't see ourselves, and that we are powerful together than alone.
You're putting yourself out in the arena, you're meeting new people and gaining that sense of community. So don't wait, do it now. Look for opportunities and learn together.
You know, there's the ability to help so many veterans who are in the exact same situation, looking for that sense of community and just the little bit of mentoring to help them get to where they need to be in their careers to fulfill, you know, their goals moving forward.
Women veterans have so much to offer the world.
It made me realize that my job and my time in service was not in vain. That's what it did for me.
I'm really thankful for this program, for bringing us together, for seeing something in myself that maybe I haven't always seen.
It's been life-changing.
Good evening. It is so wonderful to see so many familiar faces to celebrate with us. My name is Keisha Javis-Jones. I'm the program director at the Foundation for Women Warriors. This evening, I get the honor of introducing our moderator for tonight's Women Veteran Lead panel discussion. Amy Forsyth is an award-winning military combat photographer who served in the United States Marine Corps and is currently in the United States Reserves, serving as a public affairs officer. Amy's book, Heroes Live Here, is a tribute to Camp Pendleton Marines, chronicles to the history of the base, and showcases the legacy of the Marines stationed there. Amy was first stationed at Camp Pendleton in 1995 and still has strong ties to that base. She's a travel enthusiast, community connector, and involved in supporting veteran service organizations throughout San Diego County and around the country. And if you don't know her and you live in Southern California, you know her now. So Amy, if you could please join me on stage.
The amazing ladies I am going to introduce, we're going to learn about their lives, their leadership journey, and how the Women Veterans Lead program has impacted their lives. At this time, I'd like to introduce to the stage Melissa Huff, U.S. Army veteran, Women Veteran Lead alumni from 2022. She's an advisor, account service management for Dell Technologies, and a mother of 7. Thank you so much. Welcome to the stage. Next, I'd like to introduce Michelle Johnson. She's a U.S. Army veteran. She's a Women Veteran Lead alumni from 2024. She serves as the executive director of Girls Identity Summit, Inc., and a personal development and image coach. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next, I'd like to welcome Sandra Ambotate, U.S. Army veteran, Women Veteran Lead alumni from 2023. She's the CEO and founder of the Complete Solution Group and of Operation Warfighter Southwest Region Coordinator. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you.
I'd like to open it up and please briefly tell us about your journey, what branch, we mentioned the Army, but where did you serve, for how long, and what did you do?
Yeah, so I served for 4 years, so from 2005 until 2009. And then after that, I obviously had 7 children in between my now career, which is I work at Dell Technologies in the Federal Customer Success.
Okay, great. Michelle, thank you.
I served in the Air Force for 8 years, took a 16-year break. I guess I would call it a break, and then went into the Army and served for 12 years. and so served a total of 20 years as a human resources professional. And now I am fully retired and serving as executive director of nonprofit organization that I started, and also working as an image coach and helping veteran women to get dressed for life.
Thank you for being here. Yeah, Sandra.
So Sandra Ambutade, Army veteran, has served in the Army for 8 years. A little fun fact about me, I actually joined the military without speaking any English. I came from Eastern Europe, so basic training was extra fun for me. But I did 8 amazing years. I wanted to stay in the military. Unfortunately, circumstances didn't play out like I wanted to, and I had to transition out in 2012. And ever since I transitioned out, I kind of fell into the military community, where I continue serving my community by helping wounded, ill, and injured service members transition out by placing them into federal internships.
Well, thank you both, all three of you. You've come from different parts. You're in San Diego, but you've also lived not in California. So you've traveled here. We want to share with the group tonight your success and really your participation with the Women Veteran Lead Program, Leadership in Action. You each participated in that program. What made you what were you motivated by to apply? And then your experience, what were you hoping to gain from it?
Yeah, so for me, I had just started my computer science classes, and I was getting a lot of academic knowledge and getting a lot of hands-on coding skills, but I wasn't seeing a whole lot of how is this going to apply to me in the real world. So what I was looking for is mentorship. How can a woman like me, a single mom of 7 children, succeed in tech, and what would that look like? So for me, it was definitely the mentorship aspect.
Okay, and how about you, Michelle?
For me, it was the personal well-being. The 3 components, when another veteran woman actually sent the information to me, and I looked at it and I read it, but there were so many things I was already doing. I was like, can I take this on? Is this something that I can really, just dive in and be connected to? It was a good program. And so the last day, I felt really led to apply. And I think I was surprised when I got accepted into it, but happy. And I was really honored that the veteran woman that recommended the program to me, that she felt she saw something in me. So, but when I read everything, it was the personal well-being, because I had been in programs where there's talked about leadership and professional development. I was also at that time pursuing my master's degree. So there was a lot going on in my life, but I felt like I needed to make space for and that was part of my personal well-being, like not putting that to the side and doing everything else. So that was what drew me. And because I think we can be leaders, but if we don't take care of ourselves, we're just a leader that doesn't take care of ourselves. Or we can do professional development, and if we don't take care of ourselves, we're just kind of on this wheel just going. So that's what stood out to me, because I really needed that. So, and I'm so glad that at the last hour, I think I was telling Melissa, I turned my application in at 11:58, I'm sure.
And it really is a world-class program that the Foundation for Women Warriors got partnered up a few years ago, and you've gone through the cohorts at different years, each of you, so you have a unique perspective of how the program is being played out. So Sandra, what was your reason for applying, and what did you want to get out of it?
Yeah, so actually a quick story. I was studying at University of San Diego, and somebody said, hey, you should meet this Marine veteran. She's awesome. She's studying master's in nonprofit leadership, and you should just meet with her for coffee. So I was like, sure. Next thing I know, I'm sitting at a table at the coffee shop talking to Jody, and Jody was telling me all about the amazing things that she's doing within the program. And I think that was like initial kind of light inside of my heart that was, I'm studying for peace and justice, and I was kind of imagining working for a 3-letter agency. But then I started thinking, I can do something meaningful here in the community and kind of do similar to what Jody does, right? Helping other transitioning service members. And so I followed Jody for like 5 years. We've been connected, and she's been incredible mentor and inspiration. And then 5 years later, I loved my job. I still love what I do, but I just felt stuck. I felt like I'm great at what I do. I can do it in my sleep. What's next? There's something more. And just feeling stuck, that's how I came across this program. And I said, why not join this program, meet other successful women veterans and leaders within community. And so I applied, and I really went in with just an open mind. I didn't have like specific expectations. I wanted to learn. I wanted to find mentors. And more importantly, I wanted to kind of find that new community where I belong, where I can share my dreams and stories and what I want to do and not be judged or, kind of thought of maybe I'm dreaming too big. So it really kind of came full circle, and I truly enjoy that program. To this day, we keep in touch and we empower each other and we support each other through our journeys moving forward.
Well, and there are plenty of other women veteran groups out there, retreats and different programs, but this one is really for high achievers, sort of an elite level of business professionals like yourselves. So can you share a specific moment from the program that shifted your perspective or gave you a new sense of direction and purpose to take your professional careers to the next level? And maybe it was meeting the other people, maybe some of the speakers that were there. What were maybe a moment or two that really left an impact on you?
Yeah, so for me, I was with the 2022 cohort, and it was the moment that we walked into that Ritz-Carlton dining hall, and there was all of these powerhouse women, just incredible, phenomenal women with abbreviations after their name that I couldn't even count, so many. And so when we sat down and we met with them, we learned all of the adversity that they had overcome. And that to me was just a huge turning point because I really was looking for an example of how is success going to look like in the real world? How can women actually succeed and overcome the adversity? So for me, that was really my turning point.
Right. And if there's an event at the Ritz-Carlton, it's an elite, a very special engagement. So the pictures, if you haven't seen, are just, tremendous and great. So Michelle?
So one of to speak about and I say that too, the powerful, being around in a room with other powerful women, because I say we're all powerful, so other powerful women, it inspires you to, and also, like you said, Sandra, that we're all dreaming big, so you don't feel like you're different but we can all inspire each other. But one of the things that stood out to me just in the program, not when we came all together, but through the virtual, is again the personal well-being. We were in a session, and I am a organized calendar, put everything on the calendar, time, and just very probably need to relax a little bit, but it helps me is how I think. But in one of the sessions, I was like, I never put on my calendar to rest. I schedule everything else, everything. And so, and I sometimes kind of put that to the side. And out of it, I was like, why don't I schedule rest? And so I now schedule rest. There are days where it puts it on there and I'm like, I'm not doing anything. 10 o'clock, no, it's nothing before 10 o'clock. To really take care of my brain, my body, so that I can dream big and then execute those dreams as far as what I believe that I'm created to do and called to do. So that stands out, and I tell everybody about that when I was in the program, that was the one thing that I still do now. And then I advocate for others. Like when somebody's like, oh, I'm so tired, I'm burnt out on this, you need to schedule some rest. I tell them, put it on your calendar and schedule some rest. So that really stood out to me, and has, in every area of my life, it has impacted my life.
Great.
Yeah.
I would say, like Melissa, I also was blown away just walking into the room with, hundreds of most powerful women in the world, really, right? Huge CEOs, very accomplished women. For a second, I was like, why am I here? Right? That imposter syndrome was real and not. If I didn't have the fellow woman veterans with me in that room, I probably would have turned around and left because I would have felt like I don't belong there. But walking into that room, one thing that I noticed right away was all these women wearing pretty nice dress, high heels, smiling, empowering each other, sharing the stories, lifting each other up. It was just so refreshing. And as many of you probably can relate in the military as females, right? We taught to blend in. You have to be a little bit rougher around the edges. You have to speak louder. You have to run faster, right? You have to prove yourself in so many ways, plus do your job really well. So all these things, and then, like I said, walking into this room and seeing these female CEOs, accomplished, powerful women, still being feminine, still speaking softly, but still being powerful, strong, and accomplished women to lead the way and pave the way for the rest of us was incredibly inspiring and moving. And so I think when I left that event, I truly felt like, why not put a pink dress on and tell, oh yes, I'm a veteran. Why not put some makeup on and paint my nails pink? So I just loved it. It was very refreshing. It was extremely inspiring.
Well, when one veteran succeeds, we all succeed. And this is a momentum that shows the community, the general public at large, Americans, that not all veterans, have the problems, that they are going to want to succeed. And this was just a way to get to where you want to go. And so when we look at women like you, it really helps the next generation say, I want to be like her, or I want to be like him. What do I need to do to get there? And so your example is a shining display of that transition, but leadership looks different outside of the military, as you mentioned. So we didn't all have a Colonel Cummings to have us in leadership roles. If we did, we could be a better position when we leave service. But looking at what the leadership scenario looks like while we're in the military, but after the program, how did you redefine that and say, oh, I can step into bigger shoes, I can change my tone of voice, I can change my demeanor to maybe fit in, and then, be the leader that you really see yourself as being?
Yeah. So I think the program did an amazing job of offering a framework for that. And the framework they offered was really just the reflection of what have you done in your military career, but what have you done also as a civilian in order to kind of solidify those skills and really kind of condense, even for just yourself as we're going through these reflection exercises. What have I done and what has that made me good at? And what value do I bring as a result of my life experience? And that for me was another big game changer, because as I only stayed in for 4 years, I didn't deploy, I didn't view that I had a lot to offer as far as leadership skills. But after I was reflecting, I was learning okay, but I did learn how to show up. I did learn how to stay through tough situations. I did learn how to perform under pressure. And before the program, it just didn't occur to me. So I think that was another huge revelation for me.
And Michelle?
So for me, it was being seen and recognized, and just kind of sometimes, like Melissa is saying, that we're taught to blend in. We thought we're the same uniform. We have all the standards of how we're supposed to look, but yet we come to the table as a unique person. And so I think I'm learning all of that and becoming that unique leader, although we may have uh, similar leadership skills, similar traits, similar characteristics. We still, I think, in the program, it was like I felt seen. I felt, it's hard to explain it. I felt like I was seen as Michelle with one L, like because I told the story about my name is spelled with one L, and the reason I say Michelle with one L is because I went to the VA and they were like, what's your name? Michelle Johnson. That's a common name. They asked me the last four of my social. I told them there was 6 other Michelle Johnsons with the same last four. So they were gonna send me over to somewhere. I was like, my appointment is here. And they were like, okay, well, they were spelling my name with 2 L's. So now it's very important that's why I say Michelle with 1 L, because that makes me unique. And so in the group, everybody says that, Michelle with 1 L, and I feel seen. Just to be honest, I feel very seen by a group of women who understand that that's what we were taught to be, but yet they advocate for you to kind of unlearn some things. Not everything was good, and in this new season of our life, that we have to unlearn some of those things that worked then, but may not work for us now. So that's really what
Shed a little bit of the military side and then open up a new
to
way
other
of thinking and opportunities. And so, Sandra?
Yeah, I would say I would echo what both of them said. Definitely realizing your skills and how can you kind of move what you've learned in the military into the civilian world, but also kind of find your new identity in the way that you don't have to carry your MOS or your rank with you for the rest of your life, right? You can be that feminine yourself. You can be the next CEO and accomplish different things. So definitely realizing that and finding the good balance. But also I think this program really also allowed me to kind of have a space where I can share my story. And I know Colonel Cummins mentioned, the importance of sharing your story. And I think before coming to this program, I always been like, in the military, it's all about us. It's never about me. You don't talk about yourself. So I never did. Even after getting out of the military, I just always talked about the program that I was presenting. I was talking about different resources that I was presenting. But then after the program, I realized that, I brief in front of the service members every week. Why don't I ever tell my story, even if it takes 2 minutes, 5 minutes to connect, to tell them that I've been in their shoes, I've done what they've done, I've gone through the transition. And so I started implementing that. And I've noticed how much more deeper and different connection that I was getting from my audience when I started sharing my story, and I felt comfortable doing so.
Well, the impact of the program is really, has an enduring, lasting effect with you and the other ladies that attended. At what point did it either build your confidence or provide clarity on your goals professionally or personally after attending?
Yeah, so for me, my confidence was very low when I first entered the program. I was a single mom and I had 7 kids, and I was trying to go back into the workforce after raising those children for several years. And so during one of my mentorship sessions, I explained that this was a huge fear that I had. That as I'm going into job interviews, if they're asking me a personal question, if I answer honestly that I have 7 kids, is that going to be seen as a liability? And so when I was talking to Bonnie, she said, well, if you're a single mom, you probably have a lot of great logistical skills, don't you? I said, yeah, I guess. And then she said, you have 7 kids, so you're probably really good at multitasking. And I was like, yes. We went back and forth like that. And what she was doing was she was actually naming the skills that I had built without even knowing that I had built those. I had built systems thinking and that decision making under pressure, and obviously, risk management. Seriously. So that was really what got my confidence. Like if she could see that about me, and she could describe that in her language, that's what helped me to move forward.
Kind of like a flip the switch and
Yeah.
see your potential beyond what you were maybe seeing at
Yeah.
the time.
Mm-hmm.
And how about you, Michelle?
I would say just being authentic, continuously being authentic. I think when I came to the program, like I said, I was pursuing my master's. I was doing different things where when I got out, I had started, before I got out, I started doing things to prepare to transition. So I was in the midst of still doing that. So I think what the program did for me as far as it let me know, it confirmed to me that I was in alignment with where I was going and and that I could do it, that I could press through. Because there were times where I wanted to call the school and tell them, I'll call you when I want to come back. But I think during the time that when we came in person, we would have our sessions and I would say, I got to go do homework. So I think it was just being the camaraderie, having our sessions together, even virtually, just that consistent time with each other and building relationships and that's very important to me. So the sisterhood and us understanding and listening to each other's story, telling our stories, but also listening to each other's stories. So I felt like it was a place where I could be authentic. I could say, I'm doing this, this, and this, and this, and feel that confirmation of like, you're in the right place. You're doing good. Keep going. Keep going. You can do it. So that was important to me, and it still is. It has lasted even after our program ended.
Good, thank you. Any professional and personal ways that it's made a lasting impact?
Yeah, very similar actually. I walked into the program thinking, is it time for me to pivot and do something different? I'm kind of feeling like I'm at the dead stop. I'm not being challenged anymore. But when I went into this program, I walked away with the kind of reassurance that no, you are in the right spot. You're doing the right things. You just need to find different ways to fill the gaps that you see around you that needs to be filled. And so I felt like I was already an expert at what I do. I knew my field of work really well, and that's when I started realizing I don't need to pivot. I just need to start creating something new and start pushing for something better, and maybe creating a different program, volunteering for different organizations. And like Michelle, to this day, I feel like that this community really has kind of inspired me to dream bigger, to take bolder steps, and to kind of just do it, just take that step and try.
Well, that leads me to my next question about the program, how it changed the way you are interacting in your community and at work and with your personal priorities and setting boundaries. Maybe it was an example of someone at the program, maybe another person in the program, or one of your cohort leads. Maybe there's an example that you can share of like how that was transpired into taking action daily to really level up or change the way you're going to show up in your community.
Yeah, and I think it really did change the way that I showed up in my community because I was able to, like, kind of what Michelle was saying, kind of choose that sense of authenticity. And instead of performing and instead of, I guess being perfectionistic, I think a lot of us really have that tendency.
Yeah.
I was able to just kind of sit and be and in alignment with myself, which completely changed how I parented, how I showed up in my community. And I think one of the big things is maybe even a little bit less competitive, right? Because it was always about avoiding that sense of failure. And so now something I tell my kids all the time is you don't win or lose. You win or you learn. And so it's really not about that sense of competition. And it's about learning from the perceived failures that you've had. Because I've learned more from those than I ever have from being successful.
And just having that connection with other women leaders in the business community who never serve, but who are making things happen, having those in-person interactions can probably really reshape the way you feel about like, wow, there are women out there doing great things. You may never see it if you don't have a connection to that. Michelle, what would be one way you're showing up in your community or a change that you noticed from someone there?
I would say that I am showing. So, one of the things, meeting with the mentors, to me, that was such great exposure. Just experiencing them and being able to sit with them, read their bios, and then them talk to us about what we were doing or sharing with them. Um, but just exposure helps to kind of open things up. Like where, I'm like, okay, I'm doing this, but I can do this because I was exposed to the resources, or I was exposed to a new idea. I was exposed to um, a new perspective. So that is what I really, just meeting with them, just that exposure to their experiences, and then following them, continuing to follow them and see what they're doing, is also that opportunity has really shifted how I show up in my own community, and also being able to go back to them and ask them questions, or to clarify something, or to say, I'm thinking about this, because Jody and they did a excellent job of pairing us up with the right mentors. And so kudos to you all, because I still talk to them. My daughter actually met, uh, okay, the name is Hello Alice, actually met her at a conference, and they called me and was waving. I was like, oh my God, that was meant so much to me. But if I had never had that exposure, that we wouldn't have, that would have never happened. So that was it. It was the people that they connected me to were just, I was like, yeah, I knew what y'all were doing, and when you did that, you knew what you were doing.
Yeah, well, the saying, your net worth is your network is your net worth. So having touch points with these high achieving women who are
Yes.
working in business will last long after the cohort is over. So that's wonderful. I want to switch gears just a little bit and talk about the Foundation for Women Warriors. They have a number of other services, and we want to talk about the child care assistance that you received. Can you describe that, how that helped?
So in the summer of 2023, I was taking computer science classes and I applied for an internship at Dell Technologies, and I got it. And I was so thrilled. I was so excited, but I was terrified, because what was I going to do with 7 kids? They were home for the summer, right? And so I immediately called Keisha, and Keisha helped me find a summer camp that took all of my kids. And not only did they take all my kids loved it. They had so much fun. They were cared for. It was phenomenal, amazing experience. And then I was able to focus on the internship. And that was a huge game changer for me, because I wasn't splitting my attention between wondering if my children were okay and trying to figure out trying to figure out corporate life for the first time, trying to solve problems that I had never seen in my entire life. And that's what the foundation gave me through the child care assistance. It's why I'm here now. It's why I was able to get my foot in the door at a Fortune 500 company and then earn a full-time position.
Wonderful. If you follow the foundation on social media, you can see so many of the other great programs that they're helping with. It's nonstop, and so it's hard to keep up, but they're doing amazing things. These value of the programs like childcare is more than just financial. How about emotionally and your ability to move forward when partnered with the foundation for the childcare and the program?
So honestly, it was about that emotional connection, and it was about the sense of belonging. So my cohort ended right before Thanksgiving, and this was my first Thanksgiving alone. And I was super emotional, super raw. So I invited everybody over. We had a Friendsgiving at my house. We cooked, we told stories. Everybody brought like incredible dishes, and we had so much fun. And instead of sitting there thinking, I'm sad, I'm alone, I got to sit and create with other women. And it was just the most phenomenal experience. And that's how I was able to move forward from the grief of the situation into forward motion that helped me become independent.
Without it, it would have
Yeah.
been a hard way
Much
to
harder.
move forward.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the theme of tonight is preserving legacies and empowering success. So I want to start with you, Sandra. How did you see your own journey as part of that legacy with the Foundation for Women Warriors?
Yeah, so I think the program really made me realize that telling your own story is really important. And I know I'm echoing what Colonel Cummings mentioned, but that is something that I never shared before. I've never been comfortable with sharing my own story. And I think now, since this program, I've really been kind of forcing myself, even being here on this stage. It is not my natural habit. Like, this is not something that I do on a daily basis. But I just realized, why not? I should share my story. And it might be scary at first, it might be uncomfortable, but the more I do it, the more often I do it, the better I get at it. So I think moving forward, I really want to make sure that I continue sharing those stories, and I want to make sure that I inspire other young women to share their own story and not to sit in the shadows of other people's stories, because everyone has done some incredible things. Everyone has something important that somebody else needs to know. So share the stories, and don't be afraid to do so.
And last question to Michelle and Melissa. What's one piece of advice you would give to other women who are transitioning, coming up, or they're new in their transition back to civilian life? What's the piece of advice you would give them?
So I was just thinking when Sandra was talking out that I thought of the three V's that I now teach young ladies or girls that I work with to empower them, that we all have vision, which is part of our story, like how we, see things, and that we all have a voice to tell our stories, and then we are all valuable, that our stories are valuable. And so that's what I would say to someone transitioning. That's what I would say to a younger person. That's what I would say to an older person, that we all have vision. We have something that, we are created to do. We all have a voice, and that it's important to tell our stories, and that we're all valuable, that there is value in our life and what we do.
Yeah. And so what I would say is, you're not too late, you're not broken, and you're not alone. And I think that that's the most important information that anybody could have as they're making this massive transition. And it's that we're here for you, and that there's a place that you can belong, and there's definitely a community for you.
Wonderful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Sandra, Michelle, and Melissa,
Thank you.
Thank you. And without the foundation, it would be hard to make connections and raise and elevate your voice and your positioning. We can't not say happy birthday to the Army. So all Army veterans here on Saturday is June 14th, the 250th birthday of the Army, and of course Flag Day. So we're very blessed to have you with us this evening. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
A couple things I do want to clarify. So the Women Veterans Lead program is in partnership with our amazing donors and sponsors. You might have heard we were at the Ritz-Carlton. I promise you that was not a check we signed. That was one of our sponsors. So we partner with Fortune's Most Powerful Women Summit, Home Shopping Network, Heidrick and Struggles, as well as Boeing and other partners that make that program possible. Tonight, I want to say thank you so much for coming, supporting, but for all you do in your communities. To those who support our mission, thank you for standing beside us. 105 years, I've only seen the last decade of it, but I want to pay special tribute to those visionaries who led us here. To the veterans in this room, thank you for showing us what leadership truly means. You showed up. You put your feet on the ground, and you did the hardest thing, but by showing up every day, but you continue to do that for our community. And those just learning about our legacy, we're just getting started. So we have very ambitious goals to take our financial assistance programs across the country As you heard, Women Veterans Lead is already nationally accessible. So here's to the next 105 years, and thank you all so much. With that, there are books for sale. Please get them, please purchase, sign, and enjoy the rest of the reception. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. There we go.
You didn't argue this bad news. Yeah, I definitely love for that thing. No, I think we know how to write stuff.
Yo, when you have your babies in there, get ready. Okay, ready? Okay, there we go. Okay, thank you.
All right, 3, 2, 1. All right, 3, 2, 1. Perfect.
Thank you.